Welcome, everyone. This is a special episode today because we have Lauren Sapala with us, and she will join me for hopefully a very deep conversation where we will explore all kinds of things we didn't prepare for today. Lauren is a coach. She's a writer's coach. She's a writer herself with so many amazing books behind her belt, and she is also a speaker with her own channel and some amazing content on this channel that you can revisit after watching this episode. And so welcome, Lauren, today. I'm so happy to have you here. How are you today?
I am great. I'm so happy to be here and talk about INFJs and INFPs and sensitive folk and what life is like for us.
Yeah, this is a big subject, right? And this is just going to be a fragment of what life is for us. But I only lately came across Lauren's amazing channel, which seems like such an obvious thing to visit because I'm also an INFJ and I should have done a lot of that research before. But um, I came across your work on YouTube, and it was immediately speaking to me. And you were actually talking a lot about emotional stuff, but also the creative stuff. And to me, all these things draw such a parallel because you cannot think about life and emotional cycles and all that without thinking about creativity because they're so parallel. And I don't know why I'm saying this, but it's something that immediately drew me to you because it's such a big kind of theme for me as well. How do you feel about our relationship of creativity with life itself? And yeah.
This is a big, juicy topic. So, it's interesting. You introduced me as a writing coach, and I actually don't coach anymore. My schedule just got too busy, but that was how I started out. I was a writing coach for years and years, and I only focused on writing stuff. I had a blog about writing. I was very into learning about creativity. It meant a lot to me. And then I got into personality theory and I learned about the INFJ personality type and the INFP personality type, what it means to be intuitive. And that's when I started to branch out. And I did that on my blog. And then, I got the YouTube channel and I really branched out in my content, not just to talk about writing, but to talk about creativity overall. Because to me, there is no separation. And I would work with writers. I mean, for years, I worked with all sorts of different writers, people writing memoirs or fiction. I worked with a lot of artists too. And I found one of the big blocks is that people would try to compartmentalize. They would try to put creativity in this box. Well, that's what I do on Saturday afternoon. Or I'm taking a painting class and that's what I do during my painting class. Or I'm writing my memoir and that's what I do when I show up for my writing group. And I had to really break them out of that box and show them it's all intertwined. It's for intuitive people, your creative life is completely intertwined with the rest of your life. So if you are going through a breakup or you're feeling misunderstood by your parents or you're going through a major or a minor illness, like for us, it's all wrapped up in there and it affects our creativity, it affects our creative projects, it influences them. And a lot of the time, we don't even know it, but whatever creative project we're working on, it's like running in parallel through life changes we're going through. Like I can't tell you how many times I've been writing a novel and I think it's totally separate. And then I look back when I'm done and I'm like, this reflects everything I've just gone through for the past 2 or 3 years. I think it's like that for intuitive people. So yeah, I mean, like it's a really big topic, and we could probably do an entire podcast on just this. But that's the way I see it. For intuitive people, there's no separation.
No. And I think what is for intuitives is also for other people, except that they don't realize this. Because what we can see as intuitives is almost like a perspective, like kind of eagle's perch view, where other people have these things as well, but they're a little bit more, let's say, grounded or whatever we may call that. They're just having different perception, but everyone has intuition to some extent. And what I've observed in my own life and my own work is that the cycles of creativity and the cycles of life are cycles of nature are virtually the same, is all the same thing. And once I started honoring one and the other, then everything started flowing kind of more smoothly without resistance, which is what we tend to do when we try to compartmentalize, like you said, when this is life, this is making money, this is being with a partner, this is my creativity. And yeah, so I completely resonate with that.
Well, I just want to say too, I love what you said about the cycles, like the cycles of nature, the cycles of creativity, the cycles of life. Those are cosmic universal cycles, and they apply everywhere in the universe, right? So there's a period of growth, and then there's a plateau, and then there's a falling off, and there's a dormancy period, and maybe a death, and then a rebirth, right? There's that spring, summer, fall, winter. That is happening in every cycle. But in Western culture, with corporations and big business, there is no honoring of that cycle. Everything's supposed to be in growth all the time. Every business, every team, every organization, we're all supposed to be growing, 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 and never disintegrating, never having a dormant period, never going into a low period. And when we do, which is completely natural, people totally freak out. Like something's wrong, I'm depressed, this can't happen, I need to get back to growth. And it's like, no, you're in a cosmic cycle. Like we all have to go through the slow periods, the low periods, the periods where not much is happening, I'm hibernating. That's normal. We just don't see it as normal in our culture. I think intuitive people are really tuned into that though.
Yeah, yeah. And when you talk about those times, those darker times, those winters of creativity in life, when people do freak out, I can recognize it also in myself, but also in my clients. It's connected with the emotional lows and negative emotions as well that are so inherent. We just need them, and we need those times of lower moods or lower creativity so that we can integrate all the growth, because you can't keep growing. And actually I was speaking about this in just my last video, I think, how existential depression is somewhat this call for us to just like allow it to kind of percolate and allow it to integrate. Because just like in winter, when we think nothing is happening but a lot is happening, that and it's so perfect what you said, that in our modern culture that is just go, 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 grow, 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 and just create and be productive, be functional and all that. There is no space, and that comes back to that fear of empty spaces, fear of void, fear of darkness and all that people naturally have. And there is something in humans that really resists this darkness.
Well,
And
I think some of the darkness comes because we were resisting. So like we go into a winter period where or we're being naturally called to slow down, to stop, to rest, to turn inward, to be and not do. But we're really upset about it because we have all these judgments about it. I'm not being productive. I'm losing momentum. Everyone's jetting ahead of me. I'm being left behind. So we're judging it, and we're scared, and we're panicking, and we're trying to push ourselves prematurely out of the slow period. And that's when now I feel really anxious. Now I feel really depressed. Now this doesn't just feel like a rest period. It feels like a dark period. Now I feel heavy because it's this whole balance counterbalance where like we're fighting to get out of it. And our body is like, no, 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 you can't get out of it. Like the harder you fight, the heavier I'm going to get, because you need to pause right here. It's December. It's not June. and you need to deal with that. Or, vice versa for our Southern Hemisphere people. But like it's winter. It's not spring, it's not summer. And the fact that you're trying so hard to push yourself into a fall summer, you're trying so hard to stay productive and stay busy when your body and your natural energy system is telling you this is not the time. That really can bring on anxiety and depression. I think that's just my opinion.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. Actually, depression is the fact of suppressing something that just wants to be, and we do have to go through those dark cycles. And oftentimes it seems to me like when we allow it, it can just, you just process it in a few hours and you're done. The more you resist, and this is the juicy bit that I want to get into now, the resistance, the resistance is when we start getting entangled and get deeper and deeper into those, what do you call it? Moving sands or something like that. When you go
Quicksand.
quicksand, yeah, which are not very quick after all, but you get deeper into them and they're just like swallowing you farther into that. The more you resist, the more you just can't get out of it. Do you want to speak about that resistance in the lives of sensitive and maybe specifically INFJ? Because it seems to me like we are very polarized and very self-contradicting in so many different ways. And resistance, I feel, is a very big crux in development of so many people that are like us.
Well, it is interesting because I've heard that too. INFJs and INFPs are so like a walking contradiction. I've heard that a lot, that we're very like, very contradictory people. I don't know that we are. I think that we actually have a natural flow, and almost all of us try to block that flow or shape it to be something different to fit in with society. And we've been doing it for so long and from such an early age, it totally feels normal to us. We don't even know we're doing it. When resistance comes in, resistance is basically your mind is telling you it's not supposed to be this way. So, like we said, it's a winter period, you're slowing down, you don't have a lot of energy. The resistance comes in, it's not supposed to be this way. You're supposed to be high energy. You're supposed to be staying productive. Something's wrong with you because you're slowing down. So we're going into this like, oh, it's not supposed to be this way. Same thing with, a human life, the human condition. Everyone experiences periods of pain and distress and loneliness and sadness. But I think in our society, we get this message, it's not supposed to be that way. We're told you're supposed to be happy pretty much all the time. If you're not happy, and if you feel very not happy, something's wrong because it's not supposed to be that way. So that's where we get into this resistance. And I think if we can just accept it right now, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with my life. I'm not happy with my family. I'm not happy with my job. I have no idea what I'm going to do about it. I'm not in solution fix it mode. It's like such a big thing. I don't even know if I can fix it. And I'm unhappy about that. But if we just can say, I'm just really unhappy, there's not much I can do right now, but this is the way it is right now. A lot of the resistance falls away. And same thing with creativity. I think we sit down to write a book or work on a creative project and we have in our mind, it's supposed to look this way. It's supposed to be this way. I've had a novel in my head for 4 years. I just started writing and my mind told me, yeah, you're going to sit down and it's just going to flow out of you. You've been holding it inside for so long. It's totally ripened. It's just going to pour out on the page. And it wasn't like that. I got stuck. It's messy. It's missing a lot of things. It's confusing. I don't know what to do next. So that's where the resistance comes in. If I really grip onto what my mind is telling me, it's not supposed to be this way. It's supposed to be easier. It's supposed to look better. You're supposed to like it immediately. That's where the resistance to the writing is going to come in. But if I can say, well, these are the words as they're coming out. Some stuff's missing. Some stuff doesn't make sense. I guess I'll figure it out along the way. I guess it will all work out. That's where the resistance falls away. And then I can be with the work exactly as it is. Same thing with the winter periods. We can be with our emotions as they are. This is a lot harder than it sounds. I'm just sort of glibly explaining, like, yeah, just accept it and be where you're at. I don't do that. I get upset with my life, and I totally have these thoughts in my head where I'm like, I made the wrong choices. I did everything wrong. My entire life is screwed. So let yourself have that too, where you're freaking out and you're scared and you've done everything wrong. But then, let yourself come down from that and unpack things and process and say, okay, I'm human. I'm going through a really hard time. Things have been tough lately. I'm going to give myself some grace here and just realize that it's not supposed to be a different way. It is what it is.
Yeah. And this sounds exactly what is my impression on resistance and allowing and all that, because there is a magic in allowing and acceptance, which seems to unlock a lot of doors and a lot of that flow that you've been talking about, where I was thinking about the contradiction in INFJs. It's more of that paradoxical nature where we get to contain those extremes of us when we allow it again. So like myself, I do have those times when I have completely megalomaniac ideas, and it's just like, yeah, this is going to work, this is going to be big, ah, ha, 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 this kind of completely flawless, amazing idea. Then the next day I would just have, oh my God, this is such crap. This is the lowest of the lowest things. And these are kind of the extremes of humanity, basically, in a nutshell, that we are in our little heads, in our little bodies, are experiencing that polarization of all kinds of ideas, and like the widest stretch as from all the personality types, as far as I know. I'm not such an expert as you are, but have, where we go into those far ends of human experience extremely. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, this is something I don't know that. I mean, I'm sure it is an MBTI thing. I don't have like MBTI evidence to back it up, but this is just what I've seen in life. When I was younger, it puzzled me. From what I've seen, INFPs and INFJs, intuitive people overall, it's like there's a pendulum, right? Like a clock pendulum, and it's an emotional pendulum. And for intuitive people, it swings really wide, right? So our pendulum swings like over to like extreme joy and then extreme depression. And for most, I say mainstream people, just to say like kind of like non-INF people, theirs is like it doesn't swing as wide. It's much more in the middle. And I noticed this with coworkers when I was younger, because I would work in offices and I worked at a bookstore. I worked with a lot of different kinds of people. And, I was an introvert, so I was keeping my emotions under wraps, but I would observe their reactions, their emotional reactions to situations. And I thought, how odd, especially I would notice if somebody broke up with somebody, they had a partner and then they broke up. And I would, in typical INFJ fashion, are you okay? What do you feel like? Are you feeling better today? What's going through your head? Do you want to talk about? And a lot of times they would be like, yeah, I'm kind of bummed out, but it's okay. And I would take that away like, wow, they're kind of bummed out, but it's okay. And a lot of times I'd be like, are they lying? And then I'd go back and I was like, no, I don't think they're lying. Because for me, when I went through a breakup of any relationship, a friendship, a partnership, I was devastated. I was just annihilated in my soul, sometimes for like 2 years. I mean, really, I could barely talk about it. I felt like I had been crushed into pieces and I was bleeding on the inside. And I would look at these other people and think, I don't think they feel that way. I legitimately don't think they feel that way. And I couldn't make any sense of it until I realized that my emotional pendulum swings very wide and theirs didn't. And I have the same thing with jobs. I've left jobs that I needed to leave, but grieved. I worked in an office for a year and left and grieved for a year. I miss those people. I hope they're okay. I had formed attachments with all of them, even the people I didn't really like. I don't know that other people have that. And so I think that we do come off as very extreme sometimes because we feel so deeply. And to other people, it might seem like even erratic. Also because we don't share a lot of it. A lot of it's going on inside of us. And so when we do poke out a little bit and someone's like, "How are you?" And we're like, "Oh, I'm okay. I mean, my soul feels like it's been crushed into pieces and I'm bleeding on the inside, but I'll be okay." They're like, "Whoa, that is really intense." Like they weren't expecting that when it's been bubbling up within us for 6 months. So I think it's hard for other people. They're only seeing the INFJ and the INFP from the outside, which is not at all what it looks like on the inside.
Mm. Yeah, this is so insightful. And this is also funny because I've been using that metaphor of pendulum as well. And I think from reading your book, an amazing book actually, the INFJ Revolution, which I'm just finishing right now, where you were talking about seeing patterns of energy. And this seems to be my affliction as well, because sometimes it's just like you see something so clearly, you just want to tear the hair out of your head and just like make people see it as well. You're just like, how blind can you be now to see that thing? And again, that seeing a lot has a flip side as well, because it kind of turns into a sense of isolation, because like Cassandra myth or something like that, where you're so misunderstood. There is something that you can see and it's so clear and it's so tangible for someone with intuition, with those senses, seeing other things, feeling other things, knowing other things that other people don't see, and them having completely just passing by and blatantly ignoring. It's kind of causing that gap of separation between us and other people, and can be painful. But I find something that I actually wanted to ask you, and that's probably the only deliberate question I had for you. Reading your book, how did you come about being so self-validating in your intuition? Because to me, over the last years, validation, self-validation is the key that unlocks all the growth in intuitive and, introverted, intuitive people, because that is allowing ourselves to feel, see, prefer, want, and do all other things that are subjective, that
Hmm.
other people's can't see, feel, or prefer and disagree with. So talk more about that validation, that self-validation. How did you become so strongly self-validating in that?
Gosh, I mean, okay, I'll try to condense it because that's a big answer. It's been a journey, I will say. And it was a lot of different pieces. I've always been a big reader. I've always been interested in mysticism, new age topics, spirituality. I've always been drawn to those sorts of topics. And along my journey, especially like I moved to places like Seattle and San Francisco that had at those times, 20 years ago, 10 years, 15 years ago, had a lot more fringe people. I always sought out eccentric people, fringe people, people who were definitely off the beaten path, right? And I started studying shamanism. I started studying theosophy, right? Like really kind of out there fringe topics. And I started making friends with other intuitive people and talking about my experiences. And this was, I mean, 20 years ago. I remember when I really met my first very intuitive friend in San Francisco. And I would tell her, well, sometimes I see things or sometimes I know things. And she was like, oh, yeah, that's a vision, or like, oh, yeah, you're getting information. And she said it so matter of factly. And like, it's not a big deal. Yeah, of course it's real. That really went a long way towards me not feeling crazy because I did have many years where I felt just nuts. I remember I worked at an office with some people where the tension was very high. There was a lot of stress. There were a lot of very strong personalities. And I would see things all the time. I would see different colors around people, or someone would be talking to me. I get an image in my head. And I thought I was just actually kind of like losing it. I was like, I'm having a nervous breakdown because I'm really stressed. Like I'm actually kind of seeing things. And then I started writing fiction and I was like hearing voices. I was hearing characters talk to me. And again, I was like, I might be cracking up. I'm hearing things. But the more I studied these fringe topics and the more I got to know other intuitive people who validated me and reflected that back to me and said, oh, no, you're not crazy. Like you're getting information, right? That's clairaudience, or that's clairvoyance, or that's claircognizance when you feel something in your body. And then I discovered like the empath thing, right? So a step leading to step leading to step. And then I could look back on my past and say, "Oh, I could always see these things. I just didn't know what was happening. I had no framework to approach it or to understand it." And I love that you brought up Cassandra because that's such a hard thing for an intuitive person. I feel like it is our cross to bear, and it's one of our life lessons that we really have to learn, that we can see things that are so clear to us that other people cannot see. And a lot of the time, they do not want to see. Whether that's because they have to go through that trial on their own, or whatever it is, or it's scary to them. But I can't tell you how many times I've opened my mouth and told somebody something that I thought was just very clear. I didn't even think it was I was revealing anything. And they got upset or they got angry or they rejected me. And then I felt very hurt and like, well, what did I do? Or been in a situation, a lot of INFJs talk about this, where you're the downer at the party. I worked at an office for years and we got acquired by another company. And we all went out to celebrate that night and have drinks. And I was very serious. I was really thinking about things. And my coworker said, "Yeah, we're all happy. Like, why are you so upset?" And I said, "This is the beginning of the company dissolving. I mean, you see that, right? Like the company will be dissolved within 2 to 3 years." And everybody thought I was such a downer. They're like, "How can you say that? This is great. We have better benefits. We're all going to get a raise in salary." And I said, "Yeah, right now. But in 24 to 36 months, our company won't exist anymore. And you all will have to find new jobs." And it didn't go over well, obviously. And I got the reputation that like Lauren's a downer. Lauren's really like
Party
cynical.
pooper.
And you know what? Guess what happened? 36 months later, everybody had to find a new job. So
Mm.
everything I said came to pass. And to me, I was like, I'm not psychic. This is like a pattern. You can just look at the energy and see, right? Like it's flowing in this direction. So where is it going to end up? Why can't other people do that? And that was one of the big turning points in my life where I was like, you know what? I just need to keep my mouth shut. That can be hard though.
Mm. Yeah. And what a story, huh? What a story. I think even for those who don't resonate with having such foresight, and just seeing these stories into the future, or having visions or things like that, many of people will resonate with seeing other people's depths, meeting friends and seeing their depth, and seeing their maybe disappointment with life, and them not accepting, not like completely denying it for themselves. And when an empath or an intuitive person, even to the slightest degree, not having those visions like you talked about, but they would reflect some sort of insight, emotional insight, or you seem to be going through a rough patch with your partner, and they would be in a complete denial. And like you say, maybe not even wanting to engage with that empath anymore, or just not wanting to hang out with them because they're showing to them something that they're still not ready to see. They're resisting this in themselves, and maybe that would require a change or require some sort of, harder conversations, or, growing up emotionally to some insights. And like you say, many people don't want to face that, where I think intuitive people like INFJ and INFP seem to be kind of doing very well, rolling in that mud of intense emotions and depth and darkness, and not having so much fear of going into this, and almost being so nonchalant about these topics that the majority of entire population have such resistance to. And that also makes me think that, I don't know, maybe that is some sort of pioneer in emotionality in intuitive introverts like us, that is kind of creating some sort of path for the rest of people, and showing that it's possible to experience those emotions, and it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to be going through times of doubt and depression. So it seems like that intuition also relates so much with sort of navigating something for the larger population. That's kind of my perspective. I don't know what's your feel on this, but that, again, going back to the myth of Cassandra, no one listened to her, but maybe some things are changing as well. The more people have access to all kinds of teachers and access to all kinds of sharing, maybe not all will listen, but maybe some more are going to listen to those various insights. And who knows, maybe something is changing in accepting more of the intangible, more of invisible. It's definitely changing in my view.
I think it is changing. I do. I think overall, the overall culture is more open to emotional work and emotional growth. I think more people are going to therapy than ever before and recognizing they have wounds and they have issues. I think for INFJs and INFPs specifically, though, because we are born counselors, that's also part of our growth arc, is learning when someone is open to counseling and when they're not. And I think when we're younger, it's very confusing because, like I said, what we see seems so clear. And a lot of times people even say things to you. And so when you're younger, you're like, oh, they must want to talk about that. And so then you ask questions, and then very quickly it becomes apparent they don't want to talk about that. So I think as we get older, we learn how to navigate that territory a little bit better. And a lot of us do end up as counselors or coaches. I think that helps us too, to put a container around it. And that happened to me. When I was younger, I would just sort of try to counsel anyone, like anyone who needed it, because that it just came so naturally to me. And as I've gotten older, I really take a step back. We're new in this neighborhood. We just moved here a couple years ago. I'm still meeting people, and I was, over at a woman's house to have cookies and a meet and greet. And I talked to her for 30 minutes. And in that 30 minutes, I was like, so you pretty much told me your mom's an alcoholic and she's a narcissist and you have low self-esteem and you're obviously highly sensitive, but I don't think you actually want to talk about it. Even she kind of like dropped hints, or she would make jokes or say something self-deprecating. And within 30 minutes, I could gather all these things, right? Just from like jokey stuff. She kind of said, oh, my mom would never be satisfied with that. Or, oh, my mom loves her cocktails every single day. Or I could never do anything right when I was growing up. And I'm like, wow, you're really like giving me some strong messages that you've got childhood wounding around your mother. But she has not given me any sort of indication that she actually wants to talk about it. She's still in the realm of joking about it, making it like sort of like making it like it's a light matter when it's not, downplaying it. And now that I'm old enough and mature enough, I can see, oh, when someone's still doing that thing where they're kind of telling you something, but then laughing it off, or they're trying to minimize it. They're telling you, but they're not telling you, and they're not ready for you to come in and help and counsel. And that's okay. But I mean, it took me a long time to understand that. When I was 18, I was like, well, she pretty much just told me everything. Doesn't she need help? I don't get it. Why is she acting weird now when I ask her about her mom, right? I think that's hard for us.
Yeah, and what you're saying, it comes down to that ultra sensitivity that we have, and the also common wounding that we had living with people who requires that care, requires that non-stop, attunement to adults from children. So it was never a question of do they need it or not. Of course they needed it. That's why they burdened us with all their troubles, or all that stuff that happened to so many intuitive people like us. But there is also that thing what you talk about, the lesson of not canceling everyone. And to me it's funny because at this point, and there's different, of course we're talking about INFJ, but it's just a label. There are so many facets to us, right? And I know you know this. There are different tendencies and different designs to us, as in what we're here to do on this planet. And the more I've been learning about myself and my work, for example, a few years ago when I stopped my first coaching business, I was so great at it. And then one day I was thinking, I'm so great at it. I'm excellent. I'm making great money. I'm amazing results, raving testimonials, but it's not great for me. What's wrong? And then I just had this equation. It was kind of striking for me that all the things that people want might still not fulfill you at all. And I know I was on the, slope to a burnout. Had I been doing that, that would have happened immediately, I think, because I was able to feel it so rapidly. And more I went from that, and more I reflected on that, the more I started identifying with teacher, with not a particular person I want to attune to so much, rather, and not even so distinctly like narrow down to being a teacher. It's as if almost I go through my life lessons, for example, for myself, but because we're part of all that collective unconsciousness, it kind of seeps into everyone else just by my act of doing it for myself. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? That
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have to share it, tangibly, so someone can receive the information. It's almost like the network of this information that just kind of gets absorbed by people who need it. And more I've arrived at this point, and since I've arrived at this point, the more I've become almost certain that this is what is happening. I still do what I do, and I still share my stuff, and I'm still happy to coach people, but it feels almost like the real work that we're doing, and it can be different for different people, but at least for me, that what we do for ourselves, sort of radiates, and we don't have to counsel these people person to person, and we can set ourselves free from that in a way, but by understanding how that works.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that there's two things at play for INFJs and INFPs. We are healers. So when we really start tapping into that, like, oh, I have this healing ability. Somehow I can work with people in pain and I can help them shift the pain. I can help them soothe the pain. I can help them explore the pain. That's really easy for me. It comes naturally. I love to do it. I love helping people. I can do it. So we go through this period of like, well, I'll just open my front door wide and anyone in the world who's in pain, come on through. And about, 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, we're like, wow, I haven't stopped helping wounded people for 5 years now. They keep pouring through my front door because there's, 7 billion people on planet Earth. Most of them have wounds and they're just all pouring through my door. And then we realize, well, I am healing people, but I'm in codependency. I don't have any boundaries around it. I'm enmeshed with some people. I'm burned out. I'm not taking care of myself. And so we are healing, but we're not modeling right energy. And then when we start to step back and put boundaries around it and say, okay, maybe I don't need to be coaching people one on one anymore. That's too much. That feels like too much. Or maybe I only see people on Fridays, or maybe I only work with these kinds of people. But we start putting containers and boundaries in place. We're modeling right energy to the world. Our clients are seeing that. Our friends and family are seeing, humans, we all are looking at each other. We all look to each other like, well, what are they doing? What's she doing? What's he doing? Especially people we admire. That's how we grow. All of us have these, like, whether it's a real life mentor or it's just someone we watch on YouTube or we follow their podcast and we're like, oh boy, I'd love to be like them. I love their energy and they seems like such a free spirit. We're looking at other people and saying, I would love to embody this quality they have. How can I do that in my own life? So I think when as healers we can model right energy of, I'm not going to just throw my front door wide open and have all the wounded and sick of the world come in. I'm going to take care of myself and my own energy levels, and I'm going to put boundaries around this. Other people can look at us doing that, and like it is a ripple effect, right? Like you don't necessarily need to share it or even talk about it. You just do it for yourself, and it does affect, I believe, all of the population, the collective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And I've grown to that conclusion as well. Show not tell. Like this modeling is almost, not almost, but much more efficient because people, we're all a little bit like monkeys in that way. We just we just do what others do and we absorb that without even consciously filtering it through our mind. It's just like, oh, she can do it. Okay, yeah, and it makes us bolder in trying new things. So, yeah, thanks for bringing in that thought because it's an important one that it's not just through speaking or teaching, but it's through being.
I definitely, in my classes, I feel like people tell me, oh, I love the information or I love the group. And I feel like one of the big things I bring is the modeling, where
Mhm.
people come to me so scared and worked up and upset that something's wrong with them or they're really flawed. And when I can model this energy, like, it's not a big deal. You're fine. It's literally not a big deal. Then they're like, oh,
Mhm.
oh, okay. It's just the vibe. It's not any particular piece of information I have that other people don't have. I don't have some secret I'm sharing. I'm just modeling this energy of like, it's okay to be you. And it's okay to feel like you're wrong. It's okay to feel like, you don't know what you're doing. That's
Mhm.
not a big deal. And it's ordinary. A lot of times when people see, oh, I'm ordinary, there's a lot of relief in that. I think, especially for intuitive people, like, or you're ordinary for you. Maybe you don't fit into the mainstream, but for what you are, you're pretty normal.
Yeah, yeah, and I totally resonate with that because I took your solopreneur class. I was super happy that you offered it just when I got to know you, and I'm like, solopreneur topic, yes, and community, yes. This is like amazing. So that was really good. And exactly what you say is about that modeling and showing it's okay to not have everything together. It's okay to be a human in being solopreneur. It's okay to, and it was really refreshing because I remember in the past I've done a few courses on marketing and business and things like that, and they were always kind of stiff, and I always craved more transparency in people because there's always that thing that you always want to ask, like, oh, really, how does it really work? Like in your real life, how does it work when you close the door, when you're not on camera? Just how does it really work? And there was always that craving for authenticity that was not provided, that was hardly ever, if you could hardly even glimpse to their life beyond what they would curate to show people as this kind of perfect entrepreneur that they wanted to project outwards. So yeah, it's something that definitely Lauren is doing. So for anyone who wants to try her classes, because you're still doing classes, and I saw you were just offering one on midlife crisis
Oh,
for.
midlife awakening. Yep, we're in the middle of it
Mhm.
right now.
That sounded very good as well. and I am sure it's full of amazing insights for those who are attending. Tell us what is exciting for you now? What do you want to share? What is exciting for you as
Oh my gosh. Well, so a couple weeks ago, I sent out an email because I was like, what should I do next? Like, what kind of classes do people want to see? And I always like, if I'm in that place where I'm like, I'm kind of stumped. I'm usually not, but sometimes I am. I send out an email. So I send out like, what do you want me to teach next? And I kind of throw out some topics. And I got so much good stuff back. I love the people in my audience because they will share and they'll write like a lot. You know, it's INFJ is INFP. So some people are like, here's 2 pages of my thoughts. And I love it. And so I got the midlife awakening idea for that. And then people said they really wanted to see a healing through creativity class. So I think that's going to be the next one. And then people said they really wanted a mastering intuition class. So I think I'll do that after that. And then a lot of people said they wanted a connecting with the body class. And I was like, ooh, that might be tough because I really
mm,
struggle to connect with my own body. I'm willing to kind of like dive in and
yeah,
see like what we can do.
yeah.
So I'm really excited about those things on the horizon because I know they're up for people. I love teaching stuff that I know like it's up for people. I'm not just like, well, this is a generic class. I used to do kind of generic class like memoir writing. And it was fun. It was cool. Like whoever showed up and we had a good time, but lately I love that people are really showing up like I am going through this right now and it's messy and it's interesting and it's hard and it's exciting and that kind of energy, love it. So that's probably the remainder of the year. Just I'm trying to teach classes that are really to like connecting to what people are going through right now.
Mm.
So I'm excited about that. And then as always, I'm always working on another book. I have so many books in the pipeline, and I know no one's expecting them, but I'm like, man, people probably think like I'm the slowest writer on planet Earth because I am a pretty slow writer. And I'm like, I'm gonna get there. I'm like the turtle on the race course. So it's like one foot in front of the other. And I do silent writing every month. I have a silent writing program. I show up for it 3 times a week. So I'm like just getting there slowly. So I'm excited about writing and I'm excited about teaching. Those are my 2 big things.
Mm. I love both of these. I love both of these, and I'm reading your other book, the Firefly Magic, that
Mm.
you offered as a freebie so generously for your newsletter, right? This is amazing. But I have to say, it's so deep that I'm taking it in small chunks, which is not exactly something I would have ex expected from a book about marketing, but it goes really deep. So for anyone who wants to go through a book for intuitive writers, right, and creatives, it's struggling with marketing, this is an amazing asset. So I'll definitely pop your information in the description. What else would you like to share with listeners and viewers?
Well, I will just say, it's interesting that you said you really liked Firefly Magic because when I wrote that book, I felt so much doubt about it. I was really nervous that like I don't know if anyone's going to resonate with it because what I did, I had major problems with sales and marketing myself. And so I wrote that book from the framework of the chakra system. So
Mm-hmm.
every chapter corresponds to an energy center, right? So, and you, once you know that, you can kind of see it. Like this chapter is about survival issues. This chapter is about intimacy issues. This chapter is about how you show up in the world and your identity, right? This chapter is finding your voice. I didn't make that explicit in the book, but that's the system I worked from is like, I really want this to resonate with the energy centers in the body. Because when I was dealing with marketing as someone who was just getting started as a coach and an author, it was so incredibly emotionally difficult for me. And like no one else was having that difficulty. At least I felt like that. I would read these marketing books and people were just like, oh, yeah, you just got to do this and this. And I'm like, but I feel like I'm going to cry. I feel like I'm going to collapse. I feel shaky and weird and like I'm like disconnecting from my body. And like no one else seemed to have that. So I really wanted to write a book for people who have that, where it's like I'm having a really extreme emotional reaction to feeling exposed, to feeling unsafe, in the marketing and sales work. And I was like, I don't know, I might just be writing this book for myself. But a lot of people have reached out and said, like, I love that book. I've read it 3
Amazing.
times, So I just want to say if you're working on something like that, a video or a book or anything, and you're like, kind of feel like I might just be doing this for myself, chances are high you're not. There's other people out there that are going through that unique thing that you thought, God, am I the only one? I feel so alone. Other people are going through it too.
Yeah, that's such a good perspective. And I will definitely look out for that pattern of the chakra system. It's something I've been working in my program as well, just doing that because it's something where that we can process, but I'm still early on like into the book. So I will look out to this and maybe when I've gotten emotional, maybe I hit some chakra that needs a little bit more work. I will pay attention to this.
Well, and one last thing I will say, because I published that book 6 years ago, and anybody who reads that book, I would disregard everything I say about social media because social media has changed so much. I think it's so hard on the nervous system of intuitives these days. I have a whole chapter about Twitter, and I'm like, yeah, Twitter's great. I love Twitter. And now I'm like, oh God, no, it's X and it's a cesspool. Get away, run. Like all of it, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I think it is so damaging for intuitives for our mental health and our energy. The energy of social media today is really difficult and challenging and can be very toxic at times. So if you're an intuitive, I don't want to tell you what to do, but really take care of yourself around social media. I'm not on it anymore at all. I do the Facebook groups for my classes, but I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Twitter anymore, X. I barely check in on LinkedIn because I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, this energy is really too toxic and intense. And I think my mental health is a lot better being off of it.
Mm, I totally agree. I got off of it and just hang on to with some groups on Facebook and that's it. But yeah, it's once you see it, once you feel the change, it's really hard to come back to it. And there is really no reason to. But like you say, everyone will do whatever they will, but it's all about our energetic sovereignty and feeling resourced in our days. So, do you want to add anything or share something with the audience
Gosh,
before?
the last thing I'll say is please join my newsletter because that's where I send out everything. And I always say this in my videos, like my website, I don't update it as much as I should or at all. So people are always like, where's the class schedule on your website? I can't find it. And I'm like, there's not one. So if you want the info, I do pretty much a new class every month. I do a lot of free events. I do like, new videos, new books out, recommendations. All of that goes through my newsletter. So please join my newsletter. It's laurensapala.com. There's a newsletter tab, really quick and easy to find. You will get Firefly Magic for free. And if people have questions, like feel free to email me. Sometimes I don't get back for a few days because I tend to get a lot of email. But if you have a question about a class or if it would be a good fit for you, or, I do get a lot of like, tell me if I'm an INFJ or an INFP. And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't met you. So I don't know if I can answer that. I'll give it my best shot. But people can always email me, Lauren at laurensapala.com. And, go to my website, get on my newsletter, and my YouTube channel too. I do updates through the YouTube channel, but mainly the newsletter.
Yeah, and all the details will definitely be in the description box, so you can follow Lauren. I really recommend this because some amazing things are on her YouTube channel, and the newsletter is always up to date, so I can double that, and it's really good source of up-to-date information. So for now, thank you, Lauren, for joining me. I'm just super excited. We had a really good conversation. So happy that you made that time for all the audience and for myself.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.